Hello everyone, welcome to our fourth session. In this session, we are going to cover two different topics. In the part A, we will be explaining the development of a business case in project, and in the second part of the session, in our part B, we will be explaining the different stages in the implementation of a development plan. Well, let's start with the development of a business case. First of all, I want to give you an overview of the main aspects that we are going to cover in this part of the session. We are going to start by providing a contextualization for the business case. Later, we will define Later, we will define business case and we will provide an introduction to business case development, particularly oriented to asset management. And in the final part of the presentation, I will explain the different stages that we can find in the development of a business case. Let's start by providing a contextualization for this concept, business case. And we are going to start by recapping some key concepts from previous lessons and connect these concepts with the business case concept. I suppose that you are already familiar with this figure, which explains the focus of build asset management, which is basically the strategic planning of the development or acquisition and the operation, maintenance, and disposal of the built assets. Well, last week and this week, we are analyzing in some way the relations between the strategic planning and the project initiation and project definition. Last week, we were explaining the identification of capabilities, the identification of business needs, and the different stages in the development of a business project plan. Also, you must be already familiar with the different activities that we can include in build asset management. And in the last week and in this week, we are going to focus again in these first four activities, which are the identification of business needs and opportunities, the capability gap analysis and the requirements analysis, pre-feasibility analysis, feasibility analysis, planning, and finally the implementation of the plan by executing the acquisition or development of the built asset. Well, last week we were also explaining which are the main stages in the development of a major business project. We were considering the identification of business needs as a starting point in the project initiation. And later we were explaining that after the identification of the business need, we need to perform the capability gap analysis. From this analysis, we will be able to produce the capability requirement statement. After that, it's time for the analysis of the different options through the pre-feasibility analysis, which provide an initial evaluation, and with the option or a small range of options that arise from the pre-feasibility analysis, we will perform the feasibility analysis, which will provide a much more detailed plan that will be finally implemented. Well, the business case development will be linked with the project initiation, but also with the pre-feasibility analysis and the feasibility analysis, and in some way will be also connected with the implementation of the plan. We will be explaining these connections more in detail now. Before focusing on the concept of business case, I want to provide a contextualization for this concept. And first of all, I would like to reinforce the point that the vision, the organizational strategy, must be aligned with the project outputs, so must be aligned with the project scope. Actually, if we follow this top down approach, the starting point is obviously the vision of the company, which is clearly connected with the strategy. But the way to implement the strategy will be through portfolio, which is a set of programs which are set of projects. So actually projects, and the project outputs will be the responsible to realize the benefits for the organization. These benefits obviously will be got according to the vision and the strategy for a particular organization. We can illustrate this top down approach by using a simple example. Let's imagine the vision of a supermarket chain. They aim to be the fourth largest supermarket chain in the UK within 5 years. In order to realize this vision, they can consider different strategies, like, for example, to acquire or merge with another supermarket business, double the number of stores through building new ones or renting premises. This would be actually a build assets development of acquisition project. They can also consider to expand the range of services offered, or to start manufacturing its own product, or to develop some kind of innovative e-commerce solution. Connected with the previous strategies, we can develop four different types of programs, it being set of projects. For example, the new stores programs will consist on the location, acquisition or building, and finally the opening of 30 new stores located near towns where the company doesn't have current presence. And also we will include a target date for achieving this objective. Obviously, the idea here is that you explore the connection between the strategy and the program, the set of projects. Also, it's important that you consider that the organization maybe is not going to implement all these different types of programs. So, probably they will decide to follow one or two strategies connected, for example, with two different types of programs. And here is where you can find the contextualization for the business case. Because in this process of assessment of the different options, we will need to consider the business case for the different types of programs connected with the strategies that we decide to follow. So it's important that you have a clear idea of this connection between vision, strategy, and project outputs in order to understand how the organizations creates value. So from an initial situation, the current value, to the desired value, we will need the project outputs, project outcomes that build the capabilities that will bring the benefits. So here you can see how through these different benefits from different projects that conform a program, we will go from a current situation to the desired vision. So through the projects and through the project outcomes, we are executing the organizational strategy. We are achieving the vision of the organization. But this gap between the current value in the organization and the desired value need to be filled by projects which are connected with the strategy of the organization. Here you can see graphically the connection between the vision and the project output. So the vision would be realized through strategic objectives, and these strategic objectives will be realized by achieving the benefits. But how to achieve these benefits? Actually, from the outputs of the project, we will be able to build the capability that we need because we identified that capability by using the gap capability analysis. By developing or creating these new capabilities, we will be creating an outcome, and by delivering this outcome, we will be achieving the benefits. So, in this figure, you can understand easily why we have to consider the strategy when we are approving a project or when we are designing the business case for a project approval. Okay, we have already provided a contextualization for business case, and now we are going to define what a business case is. According with APM, the business case provides a justification for undertaking a project or program. So basically, the business case is giving us the reason to undertake a particular project or set of projects. It evaluates the benefit, cost, and risk of alternative options and provides a rationale for the preferred solution. It means that in the business case, we can also consider the alternatives, and by analyzing the benefits, costs, and risk of the different alternatives, we are also providing a logical rationale to support the reasons why we have chosen a particular solution. Some important aspects to be understood when we talk about business case are that the business case is going to be reviewed throughout the plan development, particularly when the information becomes more reliable in order to check if the initial business case is well designed. Second important aspect is that we need to know that the sponsor would be who owns the business case. The business case will provide an evidence of how the investment is intended to lead the realization of the benefits. So at some point, the business case needs to show that the investment is going to bring benefits, that the benefits are going to be higher than cost. All projects must have a business case that demonstrates the value of this project, and this business case, at least the first version, will be outlined in the concept phase, in the initiation phase. So, as you can see here, the business case will consider the stakeholders, the concept, the level of requirements, as well as the time frame, and will find a justification of the investment by demonstrating that the benefits are going to be obviously higher than the cost. We already know the definition of business case, and now we are going to introduce business case development in the context of asset management. In the context of asset management, we can consider the business case as an argument for taking a particular acquisition or development path. This will involve that we will providing the reasons to support a particular development or acquisition, but also the reason against a particular development. And in order to find these reasons to support or to be against a specific business project, we will obviously check the revenues, the cost, the cash flow criteria, the overall benefits, and the risk. Obviously, a business case is going to be an essential activity in asset management, and we will be developing the business case through several stages in the asset development process. A good asset manager need to be familiar with the different stages when developing a business case, and that's the reason because we want here to provide you with this skill in order that you understand what the business case is, which are the stages, and you will be able to develop and present business cases. As a generic framework, a business case normally includes the strategic case, which is obviously why this particular development is needed, and obviously how well is that project aligned with the strategy of the company. The options evaluation, we need to explain which different options have been considered and why we have chosen a particular option, which are the expected benefits if we develop these particular projects, and also the commercial aspects, which include the cost, the investment appraisal, the findings. Other important chapter is to consider the risk, but not only economical risk, but also environmental risk, organizational risk, etc. And finally, we should provide a time scale for the project for what we are creating this business case. A more detailed business case outline would include the following items. First, the project title, later an executive summary by summarizing the key points of the project, background situation, this is basically the contextualization of the project, stakeholders, we need to identify and provide an initial evaluation of the different stakeholders, the assumptions that we are considering for planning, which are the different options that we are considering, and which is our preferred option. We need to describe which is the option that we are choosing. The project financial analysis for this particular option, for the option that we choose, and the human resource factor in terms of defining the people or teams that we will need to have on board to implement the project. Also, we need to consider the environmental issues and the health and safety factors. So we will have to evaluate both. We also have to include the requirements regarding the health and safety issues. In other chapter, we need to include non-financial benefits. It means benefits connected maybe with the organizational development, with the corporate social responsibility, environmental benefits, etc. We need to include a summary of the project activities, an initial work breakdown structure. As I said before, risk analysis obviously is going to be an important item in the business case. We need to define the development and how we are going to monitor the performance while implementing the development plan. We need to include a proposed date of decision and a proposed in-service date when it's supposed that our development, our physical asset is going to be in service. And finally, a concluding summary. Well, here you have some considerations that you should keep in mind when you are designing a business case. First one is obvious, is how, where, and in what to invest. This is obviously connected with the identification of business needs in the organization. Also, in some way connected with this identification of business needs, we need to know which assets are the most critical. Obviously, the risk that we will need to manage when developing a particular project and what demands must be served. This is clearly connected with the capability gap analysis. If we focus on the project that we are supporting with the business case, we need to present the important points that needs to be known prior implementing the project. And also, what about the types of teams and human resources or specific professionals that we will need to implement the project? As I said before, we need to consider the different activities by using a work breakdown structure and how these activities are going to be carried out. And finally, we need also to consider how the performance will be measured. It's also important that you understand that the appraisal of business case options needs to show that these decisions have been informed by stakeholder consultation, particularly with the key stakeholder for the organization and for the specific project that we are proposing. It's also a good practice to connect the business case with some lesson learned from past projects, particularly if this project have been developed by the same organization. In other occasions, would be interesting to link the business case with some comparative cases, particularly if they were successful. Another important aspect to consider is that there are some important people, organizations, or bodies that need to be consulted when you are designing the business case. Obviously, one of these groups would be the stakeholders, both for the organization and for the project itself. We also need to consider both internal and external stakeholders. The finance committee would be a very important body to consider because is who manage the capital and who will advise about which capital is available. Also, we need to consider the individuals that will be impacted by the proposal and also by the risk associated to the proposal. And finally, we will have to take into consideration the local planning authorities, particularly in infrastructure and buildings.